At the very beginning of the manhwa, we see our main character just sitting on the toilet. While the guy is sitting, he hears someone's dialogue. Some people are discussing a leader named Chang Si-no. These guys think she's pretty hot, but besides that, she's also confident. Men realize that they would really like to have fun with this beautiful girl. We see a conference room. Here people are sitting and discussing their various plans. Employees want to know the opinion of their manager named Chung Si-on. She is thinking about it. A man with glasses talks about the high ceilings, columns, and majestic frescoes that will be in the interior of the building. The girl sat down. The guy said that for the company this was a perfectly chosen interior in the Greek style. Someone else enters the room. To this person, none of the above seems Greek style. The main character believes that this is very different from Greece, which he knows very well.
He suggests applying textured plaster to the white walls, as well as windows.
The man shouts at Choi Ji-woo, not understanding why he was late here. Choi Ji-woo, as a man with very high testosterone, answered directly that he was late because he was in the toilet. None of those present could have expected such an answer from the young guy. They didn't even have anything to say. It seems to the guy with glasses that the main character, as a latecomer who lingered in the toilet, has no right to criticize. Further, the man still wants to know the main character's thoughts about the interior, because after all, he understands this stuff. Choi Ji-woo says that he did not travel to Greece. It turns out he lived there. It's clear that the leader is interested. Not only did the main character live there, he also ruled the territory. The board did not expect such a turn of events. The main character, with a very angry look, hits the table and tells everyone that he was a god and is proud of it. We see this guy's memories, namely how some waifu helps to paint the limousine. Being the strongest among all the gods, the mighty Zeus, this guy could do anything, anytime. For this Giga-chad, there were no obstacles and he could do whatever he wanted. This is not life, but a fairy tale. This is all because this alpha male was a real god and quite powerful. His thunderball will never dry up with sweat as he continues his very important mission. The main character really was a god whom no one could resist. He was a real Lord Zeus. He remembers how his servants approached him and plaintively asked him for help, because they knew that he was a powerful god. The guy saw how bad they really were. He begins to worry about them and wants someone to help them. Then suddenly Zeus notices that someone is addressing him. He responded to this call with an interested look. It turns out that at that moment various gods suddenly began to disappear, and even his wife Hera simply up and disappeared. Zeus, realizing that his wife had disappeared, began to grieve greatly. He simply lay on the ground, clutching his divine head. At this moment, someone approaches this god and decides to clarify how long he has been alone. Of course, Zeus heard this. He immediately raised his head and sees a familiar face. He tries to remember the name of this person. It turned out that it was Tiresias himself. At that time, Tiresias was a great prophet of Greek mythology, and many knew about him. The main character does not understand what brought this old man here, because according to the guy, he died several years ago. In response, Tiresias begins to smile and says that when his prophecy is fulfilled, he appears again. That's why he is here. Tiresias wants to discuss with Zeus the sudden disappearance of many gods. The guy is surprised that the old stump knows something about this. The old man says that gods are creatures whose life depends on the faith of people. But if faith disappears, then they will disappear after it. The disappeared deities will be reborn as people, and this also applies to the main character. This means that this Zeus will have to live like an ordinary person. Zeus learns from Tiresias that there is a way to return back to Olympus, but it is very interesting how exactly this can be done. First, you need to find the gods reborn into people, after which you will need to subjugate them to the maximum. Then Zeus will again regain the lost faith of people in the gods, which as a result will return him endless glory. It is clear that Zeus has hope. Tiresias says that the guy will immediately understand when he meets a god or goddess. At this moment, Zeus, for some unknown reason, begins to laugh and irritate his grandfather. Zeus begins to laugh. He listened completely to his grandfather and realized what he needed to do, namely to seduce the goddesses. For this Giga-chad, this is a trifle. Tiresias understands that every creature has its own cockroaches in its head, after which it tells Zeus to remember his words in any case. Then the old stump decides to add something more, saying something very wise, but Zeus is already imagining how he is having fun with different goddesses. At this moment, the guy begins to feel that he really wants to go to sleep and he cannot control this feeling and does not understand what it comes from. Thus he fell asleep, and when he opened his eyes, he realized that he had been reborn into a man living in the Republic of Korea. This happened about 10 years ago. Choi Ji-woo wants to clarify whether the guy with glasses believes him this time. If so, then he should bow down. But the main character is now considered some kind of idiot. Meanwhile, the dialogue between the two intellectuals continues. The people in this room continue to silently listen to it all, and the leader of this group is already tired of everything. Suddenly, the girl stands up, showing everyone large cannonballs, and then screams at the guys to stop arguing. She is dissatisfied with Choi Ji-woo's behavior, because not only is he just late, but he also says some strange nonsense about the gods. Chung Sino believes that the guy should have shown a sincere desire to work hard and not put on this show. The guy realizes everything and asks for forgiveness in response. The guy with glasses turns to the assistant manager, and with a joyful look tells him that his idea was very good, for which he even thanks the group leader. However, the group leader herself believes that the opinion of assistant manager Choi Ji-woo should also be taken into account. Of course, the guy with glasses didn't like this. She agrees that the wall covering needs to be simplified and the windows larger. The protagonist's proposals will visually enlarge this space. The manager offers to correct their plan. The guy in the tie looks a little confused, but is still ready to do everything that this girl said. But as punishment for being late, the girl tells Choi Ji-woo that he will stay with her and work overtime. Of course, he is dissatisfied with this, because after work he plays League of Legends with his friends. The manager saw the reaction of the main character. It begins to seem to her that he is against something and he has something to say, but the frightened guy says that he understood her. In this case, the girl tells her employees that the work is over for today, but the loser Choi Ji-woo will still stay with her and work extra. The girl manager thanks absolutely all the employees for their very hard work. Choi Ji-woo, in turn, is sad, watching his colleagues go home. After some time, night came. The guy and the girl manager were sitting at the computers in the same room doing their work. The guy loses his temper. He cannot believe that he used to be a god, and now he sits and suffers working until late at night. This will actually lead him to his grave. Suddenly, the girl gets up from her desk and with a tired look, tells the main character that it's time to finish work. He was of course happy about this statement. You can see how Chung Sino and Choi Ji-woo got up from their jobs. The girl tells the guy that he did a good enough job. He said the same thing in response. These two got into the elevator and are waiting to arrive on their floor. At this moment, they just stand silently. Apparently, they simply have nothing to talk about. After some time, the elevator arrived at the very floor that Chung Sin needed. She decides to silently leave the elevator and doesn't even look back at the guy. The main character carefully examines his group leader, after which he excitedly decides to turn to her, intending to say something. One moment later, after the manager heard Choi Ji-woo's voice, she immediately grabbed his hand and continued to remain silent. You can see how she begins to run at high speed in an unknown direction along with the main character. The guy is now at a loss. After some time, they ran into the room. The girl closed the door and jumped on this former god. He does not understand what is happening here, and she asks to stand still. Jung Sunu says that it was hard for her, after which the independent group leader decides to immediately take action, imagining herself as a consultant in a clothing store. At this moment, the main character remembers that Chung Si-no behaved coldly towards him. Among other employees, in turn, the girl helps the guy change clothes. She found out that Choi Ji-woo has a large torpedo. She did not expect this. The guy understands that she cannot restrain her emotions. He believes that she needed to play with someone. This is the real reason why she decided to detain the guy after the end of his working day. Next, the group leader decides to taste the ice cream that Choi Ji-woo bought her recently, as an apology for his behavior in the conference room. Cho Si-no liked the ice cream very much. She wants to eat everything before it completely melts, because it is actually very hot in this room. The main character understands that this girl is the nymph Sinope, and a rather beautiful woman who also belongs to the gods. Rumors about her beauty even reached Olympus. She was a very chic goddess, and absolutely everyone wanted to take her as a wife. It was rumored that she could attract the attention of Zeus himself, and he of course tried to get her, but Sinope still refused him. Even after Zeus promised to give her everything she wanted, she still did not give up and stood her ground, refusing this beautiful god. She refused everyone all the time, because she dreamed of remaining a lonely and beautiful girl for the rest of her days, so Zeus would have to come to terms with this. However, Zeus never threw his words to the wind, and not having come up with anything better, he kept his promise to Sinope. Therefore, this beautiful young girl lived the rest of her days without a soulmate, continuing to remain completely alone. The guy remembers how Sinope had no contact with anyone until the end of her life, and having been reborn as a human, she immediately decided to start sharpening pencils. The guy thinks that this is simply incredible, and Sinope sees that the main character has again decided to remember the past, but all this has long been left behind. Even in her past life, Sinope did not have the chance to know a real strong young man, and then death came for her, which took her with him. The girl remains satisfied with the current situation. After her words, she immediately began to eat the banana. Chung Si-no continues to eat the banana, and the main character gets incredible pleasure from this because he spent his time and money on this banana, trying to find the best one. The girl is very grateful that the guy was able to teach her this bliss, but the guy himself does not understand what he did. After playing with Choi Ji-woo, she realized everything. The reason why she likes playing various games so much is very simple. The reason for this is the complete loneliness that haunted her throughout her life, despite the fact that it was her choice and she lived like this all her life. Sinop was completely alone all her life, and until her death, she reminds the guy about this and asks him to make her forget about that unpleasant feeling. Chung Si-no has already opened her expensive garage for the guy to drive his expensive limousine into. She wants him to do it as soon as possible. Since this is what this girl wants, the guy is ready to fulfill her desire, after which he drove his limousine into her garage so that she would be satisfied. The girl gets pleasure from this because no one has ever parked their limousine in her garage before this guy. The main character says that he really likes her garage and it looks very attractive, and there is also a feeling that the girl's fuel tank will soon explode. This guy considers himself the only person who has a torpedo large enough that it hardly fits in various garages. The girl understands that she should have allowed Zeus to set his torpedo into action long ago, because he controls it quite well. The main character now considers Sinopa to be the most hospitable girl he knows, and he knows quite a lot. Choi Ji-woo realizes that Sinopa wants this guy to make her garage gas tank spill, so he keeps going. After some time, the main character has a volcanic eruption. The girl's fuel tank can hardly stand it. After the action, the kind girl tells the main character that if she were a goddess, she could play various fun games with him every day. After some time, we see a girl barista. Right now, she has prepared a macchiato, and with a very pleased look is serving it to her unremarkable client. However, she suddenly noticed that her client Choi Ji-woo was ignoring him. It turns out that the guy is engaged in mooning, and she is now just bothering him. The barista still continues to attract his attention, and the guy in turn thinks about when the goddesses will appear. Meanwhile, a large queue has accumulated behind him. The prophecy that Tiresias himself told him about says that having been reborn, this guy will have to subjugate everyone to God, but it's only a matter of time. However, Choi Ji-woo is well aware that since Sinope is a nymph, she is not considered a goddess, so he will need to find someone else. The people behind the guy are tired of him delaying them all. The guy continues to think about various goddesses, realizing that he has not yet met any of them. Suddenly, Choi Ji-woo decides to hit the table, scaring the barista. He is very irritated by everything, because the same thing happens every day. Then the barista again decides to contact this guy so that he takes his order and does not delay the line. This time, he turns his attention to her. The guy came to his senses. He asks for forgiveness and wants to receive iced tea from the girl. The embarrassed girl agrees to fulfill his request and will now bring everything. After some time, the Gigachad left the line. The next guy approached the barista and began to place his order. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Choi Ji-woo continues to walk around this cafe. He realizes that he has been waiting for goddesses for about 10 years. Without meeting anyone, he is thinking about how much longer he has to wait. While the guy was in his thoughts on the way he met some little boy, this boy inadvertently crashed into Choi Ji-woo and spilled his drink. The little boy fell to the floor and, looking around, sadly realized that he had spilled his delicious drink and also crashed into his big uncle. The boy expected that right now the main character would start scolding him, but instead he extended his helping hand, wanting to also find out if this kid was okay. Choi Ji-woo is not at all angry about the actions of the little boy. He happily promises this boy to buy something tasty for him, so there is no point in crying. At this moment, our main character hears someone's voice. He looks very surprised, and the voice itself asks for forgiveness for what this kid has done. The voice actually belongs to some woman. She is addressing a little boy named Min-jun, reminding him that she told him not to run. It turned out that Choi Ji-woo suddenly felt some strange and crazy vibration throughout his body. He doesn't understand why this could even happen. Then the guy takes out his phone and sees some kind of application related to the Girl of God. He strongly doubts whether he installed this application at all. He reads about a certain woman named Minamazani. She is the goddess of memories. Her parents, the god of heaven Uranus and the goddess of the earth Gaia, Zeus and Minamazani, were in a relationship for 9 days. The guy decides to peer into the dark silhouette of this goddess on his phone. He is surprised to discover that this silhouette is somehow unusual. It seemed to this guy that Minamazani had changed a lot. Now she looks very unusual and also very beautiful. The main character can no longer control himself. He sees that she has finally appeared here right in front of him and is very happy about such a long-awaited event. He understands that this woman is the reincarnation of Minamazani. The woman sees the guy's very strange look and decides to find out if everything is okay with him. At the same moment, suddenly someone starts calling Namazani, calling her sister. The guy was very surprised by this and decides to find out who her brother is. It turned out that her brother is Ji-hyuk, the same guy with glasses from the conference room. He doesn't understand what Choi Ji-woo is doing here. Mnemosyne decides to ask Ji-hyuk if she knows the main character, but Choi Ji-woo was ahead of the guy with glasses and answered first, saying that they are colleagues. The main character still cannot believe that the assistant manager's sister is really the reincarnation of the goddess. In this case, the woman decides to get to know this guy better. The guy looks at her and does not understand how the reincarnation of the goddess could turn out to be the sister of his colleague. She decides to tell about herself. She is Ji-hyuk's older sister, named Kim Shin-hye. Choi Ji-woo is still in his thoughts and does not understand what these twists of fate are. Kim Shin-hye asks the main character to take care of her brother. Meanwhile, Ji-hyuk does not understand what she is talking about, because they are both assistant managers. Suddenly, the baby turns to his uncle and says that he really wants ice cream. Of course, Ji-hyuk cannot refuse such a little angel. Ji-hyuk said goodbye to his sister and co-worker, making it clear that he was going out with the kids for ice cream, so he wouldn't be here for a while. The woman asks the guy for forgiveness. She doesn't even know what to do because he drinks the child. All the guy's clothes are wet. He asks her not to worry about it because he's fine. And yet she wants to add one more thing, but Choi understands that he must detain her at all costs, so he should find some excuse for this. Since she and Ji-hyuk are colleagues, she asks the guy to let her treat him to something tasty. With such an offer, she was able to interest him. Suddenly, the main character decided to think. He understands that he should not rush to answer, because excessive compliance can simply frighten off Namazani. A smart guy knows how to get out of such a situation. At this moment, he sharply asks the girl to help him choose some kind of image. She did not expect anything like this. With an embarrassed look, Choi Ji-woo tells her that he urgently needs to buy clothes, but he himself doesn't think or understand anything about it, so he needs help. The girl is still only thinking about his proposal. He asks her to just imagine that she is choosing clothes for her brother Ji-hyuk. The guy really hopes for agreement. Suddenly for the guy, Namazani, having thought a little about his proposal, began to smile, giving her consent. This, of course, made the guy very happy. Then the reincarnation of the goddess decides to hand the main character a dry rag. Initially, he cannot understand why exactly she decides to give him this thing. Holding out this rag, Namazani tells the guy that he can wipe his wet pants with it. For some reason, the guy is very puzzled. Despite all his confusion, Choi still decides to take this rag for himself in order to wipe his pants that her son wet. As soon as the main character took the rag from the hands of this beautiful girl, something suddenly began to happen to her. One gets the feeling that she hasn't touched strangers for a long time. She suddenly shrank and started screaming a little. Choi looked at this picture and didn't understand what was happening to her, because he hadn't even had time to show her his collection of Hot Wheels. Mnemosyne suddenly asks for forgiveness from this guy, because her body suddenly began to do something strange that she herself did not expect. Because of all this, she is now a little ashamed in front of Choi. The girl is already having difficulty standing on her feet and has the feeling that she will soon curl up in the fetal position. The main character touched her shoulder and is already inviting her to go to the hospital. Mnemosyne continues to make various strange sounds. The guy still cannot understand what is happening to her, and she, in turn, is trying to tell him something. Suddenly, we see that the Mnemosyne's fuel tank suddenly broke, and all the fuel flowed straight onto the floor. Apparently, someone will have to clean it up. We can again watch Ji-hyuk, who during sunset stands alone and smokes his cigarette, looking into the distance and trying to seem very mysterious and different from everyone else. Choi Ji-woo decided to interrupt his peace. He approached his colleague with a satisfied look and wanted to urgently tell him something or ask him. The guy with glasses understands perfectly well that Choi usually doesn't smoke, so he doesn't know the reason why the guy decided to come here. Choi, looking pleased, is about to say something to him. Ji-hyuk was very surprised that his colleague, with whom they constantly argue, decided to suddenly turn to him to tell him something, so he would be interested in listening to him. Suddenly, the main character kneels in front of this guy. He begs Ji-hyuk to give him his sister. The guy with glasses is now in complete bewilderment. Choi tells him that his sister is exactly the same as himself, namely the reincarnation of a goddess who became a human, so he really wants them to be together. He continues to beg the girl's brother, saying that if he gives her away, he will receive a great blessing, and Ji-hyuk's face shows both bewilderment and anger. Ji-hyuk still doesn't understand what kind of nonsense his colleague is talking about, so he decides to hit him in the face with all his might, so that he knows to stay away from his sister. After such a powerful blow, Choi Ji-woo simply lay down on the ground and continues to lie. He is very offended, because no one believes in his stories. Everyone considers them some kind of fairy tale. Then the guy, despite all the pain in his face, decides to stand on both legs. Ji-hyuk doesn't understand why he's standing there silently, and the main character apparently has some kind of plan. Choi Ji-woo decides to stand next to his colleague and start looking into the distance. He says that he is curious what kind of person his sister is. Ji-hyuk is still at a loss. The main character's colleague doesn't understand why he suddenly decided to talk about her. Choi, with a satisfied face, tells him that she seemed like a very good person to him. She is really a very good person. Unlike Ji-hyuk, the guy with glasses did not expect such a statement from Choi Ji-woo. It seems to him that the guy really went crazy. But despite all the oddities, Ji-hyuk, smoking his cigarette and looking into the distance, decides to talk about his sister. He tells the guy that she got married quite early. After that, she had 3 children, but it all ended in divorce, so we can say that she is now a single mother, and this is a great chance for Choi Ji-woo. Ji-hyuk says that Namazani had no choice. She had to fight all this alone because there was no one specially around. The story is so sad that the guy had to light another cigarette. On the one hand, he feels very sorry for her, but on the other hand, he is annoyed that his sister Nuna has to go through such difficulties because she deserves more. The main character makes it clear to his colleague that he understands him perfectly, after which the two begin to silently look into the distance, thinking about the events happening in life. Then suddenly we are shown 3 children who are right now sleeping soundly on their bed. It is clear how very comfortable they are now. We see the mother of these 3 children. This is Namazani, who is taking a shower right now after a very hard day. It is very relaxing. And after that, she also thinks about going to bed. Suddenly, the girl begins to feel like the main character is watching her. She understands that these are some kind of glitches again, so she tries not to pay much attention to it. After this moment, it begins to seem to her that she has really gone crazy, because apparently she sees this quite often. Now we move to Choi's room. Judging by the guy's physique, he likes to use steroids in the morning. Right now he is lying in his bed thinking about something. Choi Ji-woo, lying on his bed, understands perfectly well that his life has changed beyond recognition after reincarnation. This infuriates him very much, because it is quite difficult to get used to. He was about to fall asleep, but suddenly he opened his eyes, realizing that he must not forget about his main goal.